Baby Sharks on the. Is Team Baby Sharks on call?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, OP is here. OP is around.
Okay, if
Baby Sharks is around.
team opposition is on call, then I think we shall start finals right away. So for our finals, we shall have a 5-man panel that will be chaired by all right. So our 5-man panel for this final will be chaired by Judge Comfort Topia, all the way from Nigeria. Shout out to Comfort. Is Comfort on call? Chair, confirming if you're on call. Is Chair on the call? Comfort. Confirming, is Judge Comfort on the call? All right. Okay, as we wait for Chair to come, is Chair Blinkton on the call? Just unmute and confirm availability. Is Blinkton on call? Okay, can I be heard? Just confirming. Can I be heard? Someone confirm if I'm being heard.
You're audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, if I'm audible, do I have Blinkton on call? Okay, if Blinkton is on call, do I have Magomo Raymond on call? Do I have Magomo Raymond on?
Yeah, I'm on call.
Okay. Do I have
Hi.
Okuku?
I am so sorry for being late. I actually thought we were going to use Discord, so I kept waiting. Really
Oh,
sorry.
it's calm. We're just doing panel announcement right now. Do I have Okuku Elizabeth Sasha on call?
Yeah, present.
Okay. Do I have retired on call? Retired, confirm availability.
I'm available.
Okay. Now that we have all 5 judges on the call and the 2 teams in the call, I'd like to hand over to Chair and have an exciting round. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Cap. Anyways, guys, my name is Comfort Topia. I'm going to be the chair for this round, and congratulations to every single one of you that made it here. Some people more deserving than others. However, let's have a fun round, guys. So good luck. Pop, first speaker, you can kick off the debate.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Alright, so it's a final. People have given out shout outs in the final. So the Starksons, you've been a very important block towards this final. The attempt of this round was like grass anyways. Try to build a few things around structure in itself. And yeah, partly it's been able to pay off because there is a realization that we've been able to pull through on the things that we wanted to work on anyways. I also want to shout out to Op Team. They've been my kids. I've coached them. I didn't actually expect that they would make the final. So partly this speech is dedicated to you. Maybe I'm able to offer a few things that largely work with the trainings I offered. But yeah, I hope this will work to as well illustrate those same things that I've probably for long asked you to do within rounds. Yeah, and all to the judges that are doing quite great. I commend Allcom for the good work. I think putting up tournaments is always not easy based on clashing schedules. And like judges who put up time to do the same. And most importantly, the competition that makes these tournaments as well worth a run anyway. So that is off my time. I'm just gonna get into business shortly. So again, if you have POIs, I'll pause in my speech to ask some level of clarity and then preferably around my second minute or so. Yep. So in case of a POI, you're just gonna have to verbalize it. Just say POI. I'll see if I'll take you noise. Just like ask once. We'll evaluate that. Cool. So we're gonna start this speech in three, two, one. There are few concessions we're going to make on government. One, that this decision is going to be emotionally difficult, but secondly, the love is beautiful in itself. But this is also crucial for understanding. You don't have to assume that the decision by Tupu is something that is not well thought. We think the decision is born from harsh arithmetic realities in itself, the profound sense of him being an ultimate person responsible for the sustenance of his family, but also pragmatic understanding of love in itself. We don't necessarily think regardless of love beautiful, it then substitutes survival and progress for you as a person. Our premise on government is going to be simple. When Tupu actively moves out of this relationship, it's a move that is out to act out of the brutal rationality that ultimately serves the greater good, including tities. This is going to be embedded within my speech, and I'll show you value for why this exists either way on that end. The couple of things then to understand around the context of this debate. Firstly, the nature of the relationship in itself. Notice that for a whole decade, the relationship was in stagnation, which means there was a failure to sprout for him as an individual. For 10 years, Tupu and Titi existed in a state of suspended animation in itself. The relationship, though rich in emotional accuracy, was still catastrophically poor in every other metric of development anyways. It means in terms of all the promises they had, like love, like development, were ultimately a cruel joke. That is probably why that promise perpetually deferred in itself, because one, it created a sunk cost fallacy in itself, because 10 years is not a testament for future potential in itself. It is evidence of a sunk cost in itself. So if after a decade of shared struggle, Tupu remains broke with no tangible path to improvement, the premise of their partnership in terms of mutual development was ultimately a failed strategy in itself. This is not a seedling about to sprout in itself. It is a pot-pound plant that has no run-out nutrients, so love did not fail. The project of building life together most likely did in itself. But secondly, it's because you create an illusion around progress in itself, because working together to survive is not a life plan. It is a description of subsistence. Survival is the baseline of existence, not its pinnacle in itself. That means Tupu has come to realize that the relationship based solely on surviving the present is a betrayal of the future, his own future, Titi's future, but any of the family that might have dreamed or most likely aspired for him to be as an individual. The necessity is the pressure beyond the selflessness, like the selfishness of love in itself. When you decide this, I think it's most likely necessitated by the pressure that far exceed the romantic bubble you exist in with the Tupu in itself. Ultimately, love is a personal luxury in itself. We think responsibility is a social imperative in itself for two basic reasons. One, you have an active responsibility to your family. Tupu likely has approximate responsibility to his own family of origin, his parents, his sibling who may depend on him directly. It means his continued state of broke existence renders him incapable of fulfilling these fundamental duties himself. When he chooses to remain in the situation where we cannot honor these obligations for the sake of romantic love, I think it's not seen as noble. It is seen as selfish. Not within the motion,
Pesh offers him the opportunity, not just personal worth, but the capacity to be the provider, to uplift his entire family from potential poverty himself. This proximate responsibility to blood and akin must ultimately, in the core cultures of real life, outweigh the perpetual romantic partnership that goes nowhere in itself at a point in time that it's bound to fail. But secondly is to say, life becomes meaningless without that urgency, not panel. To be broke is to be powerless, which means it is you most likely have your choices dictated by necessity and not desire. It is the inability to care for the loved ones in the times of medical crisis, to secure shelter against uncertainty, or to offer anything but promises in itself. It is this state that renders life meaningless because it strips a man of his urgency, his ability to act in a meaningful force in his own life and the lives of others. Money is not the meaning of life, but it is the toolkit that allows you to build meaningful life in itself. It means without money as tupu, you're not a partner, you are dependent, even in the relationship you exist in. So if Op want to argue that, well, the narrative is going to be bad for you, that narrative is already bad for you as an individual. You don't have the capacity to feel prestigious or to have some level of pride on those particular things. But let's just then engage the most likely chat on opposition, because opposition wash would be, oh, the world is less likely going to support you. They're much more likely going to target and tag you with specific name. I don't necessarily think the world is likely going to act in this way, because the world has actively evolved to value pragmatism over sentimentality in itself, because the world understands utility. Society values success and stability. It will see Tupu's move not as a betrayal, but as a strategic upgrade from a failing venture, a decade of no progress, to a stable and prosperous one. The world respects a provider more than a lover, essentially, in itself. But I think second is because of the transparency of the transaction itself, because in his new relationship with Pesh, it is honest, it is transactional. She provides financial security and luxury, he provides companionship and the role of husband. This is a clear contract, unlike the monkey field contract that you have with Titi in that specific regard. That is what becomes better, because that definitely allows you, or that allows the whole world to understand and respect your clear contract that you have in itself over the promises that you're unable to fulfill. Again, because you failed to fulfill those promises, we are much more likely going to backlash you, and that would fail you as an individual. There are two exclusive impacts to this case that you have to value within this debate. First is why actively you liberate Titi herself from a stalled life in itself. Because paradoxically, when Tupu departs, it is the greatest act of care he can now offer to Titi. For two reasons. I think first is because of the guest of the second chance stuff. When you leave, it means Tupu forces Titi to break free from the sunk cost fallacy in itself, which most likely means he's releasing her from a partnership with a man who cannot provide the future he promised himself. While, and we can consider this is most probably going to be painful for him as an individual, but this gives Titi the opportunity to rebuild her life. The reason why Titi was most likely unable, or was most likely able to reject most of the, say for instance, partners in themselves, is because as Tupu, you actively promise that you will have some level of stability within the future in itself. You're much more likely saying, I'm only a high schooler at this time, I'm most likely going to find a new job in itself, I'm going to be able to care for you as a person in itself. Notice it was a continuation of that specific promise, where you stay with her out of pity or obligation. That would be far a greater cruelty in itself. You condemn her to a lifetime of shared poverty. That becomes bad, and this is why we actively question governments to break off the shackles of poverty. That's why there's a rational questioning of your own parents to find your own agency as an individual, because you think those are the most proximate channels of you finding life for you as an individual. But also secondly, it's because you most likely are spurring her into a future resentment of the love would not have lasted. The constant stress of financial decay acts as an acid that slowly erodes that care and respect. And this is practically very intuitive. Note that for love and relationship, there is diminishing return to that specific love. The reason why Tupu might have fallen in love with Titi was practically because Tupu was most likely beautiful within that specific regard. But I think because of things like evolution, things like externalities that you can't actively control, like aging in itself, all these are active incentives. This make your love ultimately deteriorate over time in itself ultimately. That means at a point in time that you exist within a relationship, that specific relationship, without the same value that you got out of that relationship, it much more likely means that same love, that same care, that same respect now yields no progress for you as an individual. There is no security for the future itself. That means the input you invest is constant, but the output is most likely flattened because you don't get the same things that you actively got at the end of the day in itself. When you decide, it's going to be painful, but it's the only corrective mechanisms that gives you value as an actor we're proud to propose.
Thank you, Speaker, for that wonderful speech. Opposition.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll
No, you can continue. I was only answering your question.
Could I confirm on the minutes?
Yes, we are using 8 minutes.
Okay. So I'll begin in 3, 2, 1. So basically, from the entire propositions case, for us to first continue with them, is that we need to understand something here. We need to look at, first of all, intimate relationships. They involve things like communication, transparency, discussing, and accountability. In the entire case, they try to show you that perhaps the economic state of Tupu is because of being in a relationship with Titi. Then they suggest that perhaps this specific relationship is the problem, but that's not necessarily true. Many people have been in different relationships and have built themselves economically. For us to assume that the only reason he's not developing economically is because he's specifically with Titi, that is wrong. And then to assume that his economic problems will then be solved through Pesh, I believe, first of all, we need to question this. We cannot convince ourselves that a simple relationship with someone is going to turn around your economic state. Why? If that was so, then we would look at so many current situations in modern day world where people's lives are forever changed. I'm going to show you why this does not happen. When we look at transactional relationships in the other side, is that you need to understand their cross-generational relationships. This then means that Pesh is probably an older woman with much more experience, and Tupu is probably not her first. Why is this something important to note? Being a transactional relationship, the only things like pleasure is that are got out of it. That is simply his only roles are things like providing sexual pleasure, and that's it. And basically having a younger person around. Now, you need to understand these types of relationship. She has more persuasive power because she has a higher economic ability. Number two is, now why this is something important to note is because according to men's ego, this is something that's going to hurt him because it then gives her power to do whatever she wants really. What does that then mean? Things like abuse are very much capable to be happening in such a relationship. Number two, there's no communication, there's no transparency, there's no discussing, there's no accountability. This then means that her having a higher persuasive power and her having the economic ability does not then assure him of having any of this property. Why are we saying that? Because these relationships work where one has to be continuously vulnerable until the other person finally gets what they want out of them. This then means she will not let him have the capacity or the enough property that he needs to get out of the so-called economics problem. Even on the best case scenario whereby he's given the property, most cases, this involves things like land, which requires long procedures to transfer. And even if they successfully transfer, something is going to probably happen and he won't be able to handle this wealth whatsoever. So at the end of the day, things like economic development are not achieved. Why? Because of things like the fact that these relationships have to work where someone is vulnerable and they're continuously put in a state where continually going up for someone else, and that then means that they are kept in a position where he can't really economically grow because he's constantly being put in a position where he's just being used, and for that to happen, he has to be the vulnerable one in the relationship. Now we come back to the intimate relationship, where things like communication and whatsoever. What we get from their speech is that there's no actual commitment in the relationship because for 10 years there was no progress. Well, we have shown you that it is neither on the other side because he's only used for a particular time and for only specific reasons. At any time, being such relationships, it is usually easy to get somebody else to substitute this person as long as they feel like. That means there's no actual security, there's no commitment in the relationship. That even adds on to our point that there's no assured economic gain. Now, understand that it also talks of things like she proposes to be the provider, and that is exactly our point. Usually, these relationships, like I have explained, they need someone to be in a constant need of the other. That is to say, Tupu is supposed to constantly need her to remain in the relationship because there is no emotional attachment. That means that being the provider, she may be able to give him that short-term economic leverage to take care of his family whatsoever. But once she feels like it's enough and she can get somebody else, that means that means that he's probably going to lose that and going to take the family to a worse situation. Now he talked of things like, you know what, people are going to be on his side and be like, we understand. Taking the state of these so-called transactional relationships, that they are not stable and they're usually going to like abuse whatsoever. It then means that if these relationships are not stable, it then means he's going to, when he falls back down because of, let's say, that economic instability, he's then going to face the public oppression, because they will not oppress you at a point where you are high, where you have the money and whatsoever. But once you come down or you're replaced, that is when the shame will come in. Now, the effect here, we're seeing that living, there's no surety of a lasting relationship, there's no actual ownership of property, there's going to be society backlash, especially when he comes down, because people only will hype you when everything is going right, but once it fails, they will point out everything what was wrong. And then because there's no emotional attachment, he's probably going to feel the gap between the previous relationship he had with Titi and the relationship he has with Pesh. Then there's also him having the concept of going back. That is highly unlikely to happen. Why? Because Titi has a history of refusing everybody else, and he was apparently the only allowed person. It is going to affect her with shame, with torment, with heartbreak, and it is going to make her hate him. There is no way he's going to have a backup relationship in case the one with Pesh doesn't work. At the end of the day, him leaving is going to make him suffer, and then there is no surety of the so-called property and whatsoever he gets, which proposition shows us in their case. And even if it is there, it is even in the best case scenario, we're showing you that at the end of the day, these relationships, by the time he leaves, he's probably going to undergo things like emotional abuse, because naturally you cannot have a man is not, even if he convinces himself how much. Yes.
I don't think this debate is an actor motion about whether Tupu should do such or not. The debate is about Tupu has made the decision. Are we willing to support him as society or not? Because you're talking about lots of things that he has for us to support, but you're not arguing why you're opposing them.
Why we are opposing them is because at the end of the day, you need to look at the effect that they are going to greatly affect him at the end of the day. At the end of the day, what he's searching for isn't going to be achieved. None of the things he's looking for in Pesh are going to be achieved. Why? Because we're showing you that these relationships are usually, there's never a balance. The person with a high economic strength is always the one on the upper side. This then means there is no things like commitment, there's no things like open discussion or accountability for him to be like, to perhaps follow up with processes of, let's say, property transfer or security whatsoever. It then means he's not assured of things that he will get, such as things like the property whatsoever. So at the end of the day, the whole proposition case of him having a chance to take care of his family and being in a relationship stuck, it's not going to be fixed by a short-term thing whereby he's having hope in a person who is after momentary things. This is what we're trying to show you. We're saying that most likely he's going to leave the relationship with emotional abuse, with sexual abuse, and there's not going to be such a thing as economic development. What does that then mean in the long run? He's going to probably go way worse than what he left. It then means he's going to suffer people's backlash, because then people will mock him for the things he has gone through. Besides leaving this person behind, he's probably going to suffer effects such as, being worse than he was actually before. That's what I'm saying, that at the end of the day, when you look at what he went after and then the outcomes of it, it is highly likely that things are going to go way worse, and he won't be able to have any other reasonable relationship in case this one said. And we have shown you why this is most likely to fail, because you need to understand the type of transactional relationship. So at the end of the day, as team opposition, we do not support his decision, because it's going to affect him as a person, and he's not most likely going to have any backup ideas, because even the relationship he left is most likely not going to allow him back. That I'd like to raise my case.
Thank you, Speaker, for that wonderful speech. Guys, please look at the chat space, because I will not be unmuting to distract you from your speech. So with that being said, I'll be calling on Proposition Second Speaker.
All right, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right, so couple of shout outs to the Haibo. Okay, cool. Couple of shout outs. Shout out to Tupu himself on this call that is going to give that speech. Shout out to Rien for for the love and stuff. And shout out to the lovely woman of my life because it's a love motion. And obviously shout out to OC, shout out to the judges, and shout out to the teams that have had to sacrifice up until this point. But we just wanted to show you guys that you can do anything with any conditions, even if it's just 5 minutes or 4 minute speeches. So there's to growth, cheers to growth and stuff. I just need one more final confirmation that I'm still audible, and now start.
Yes, you're still audible. You can start.
Great. Starting in 1, 2, 3, go. Madam Chair, in the early stages of girl education, society chose to make its commentary about the potential risks of girl education. That is the shift that you would probably have when you are a girl and you go to a school. They criticize you, they glorify the idea that this was something that is bad for you. They chose not to support you by giving you emotional comfort, by telling you how things can happen other ways, by probably also allowing for a different discussion of avenues in which you could be protected even with these potential risks. Opposition team chooses the same thing because the actor has already chosen the decision that they have made. Should we stand by as society and oppress them and be part of the demonizing committee other than helping the actor and offering support for people to have closure in relationships, for people to have safely closed relationships, but also to have sustained social interactions even if you break up for whatever reason? We choose the latter from proposition. We think it's important not to criticize potential risks, but actually do something about them. What is the purpose of this frame? The purpose of this frame in extension is simple. It says opposing Tupu is going to do nothing. He's probably not going to change. So at best, the case you have from opposition in terms of engagement is very meaningless. I mean, let's just engage them directly. They say that what is most likely to happen is that this person Tupu is going to feel bad because he's losing his partner. Well, the comparative is that he will have to hate Titi as well if he's to recede on the decision, right? If they think that the motion is going to play out that way, if he's staying with Titi, it means that he's gonna hate Titi because Titi now exists as the opportunity cost between him and a good life. Even after 10 years of commitment, 10 years of respect, 10 years of care, and being that uncharitable man who is constantly demonized in society for contributing nothing to the relationship besides intimacy. I think we should allow Tupu to navigate, and while doing that, we should most likely allow him to be supported as well. But let's say that the comparative is on the way that we most likely say. If society continuously demonizes Tupu and Tupu is unwilling to change that decision, it means that he grows resentment towards Titi still. Titi is now the source of his suffering even when he wants to have another relationship. She's glorified as the martyr, the victim. And I think this also increases and amplifies the hate that Tupu has towards Titi. So he's most likely going to stalk her, make sure she's failing in other relationship, while the support suggests otherwise. Because we need to frame what the support could most likely mean in the debate. The support for Tupu in of himself is that he is able to get genuine emotional support, family understanding, people who sit him down with Titi and are able to negotiate how this relationship is ending and able to allow each one of them understand why this relationship was never meant to work. That's proper closure. That is proper, that allows both Titi and Tupu to progress. This is why in the framing that first speaker gives you is that this is also something that allows Titi to find a better life as well. Notice that the benefits that Tupu also gets if they stay to become friends, if they stay to most likely engage and still have social interactions, they're still going to be probably towards Titi. You can go out, drink, and all those things, and probably make like have fun and the likes. So I think this is why the support discussion of the debate is very, very significant. But I'm just gonna go back and reiterate on the necessity for support. This debate is about Tupu balancing out his life and why we need to support him balancing out his life. I think as society, we in the retrospect, we have encouraged a lot of narratives that have shaped love in poverty as perfect. We have a moral obligation to support any person who makes that no longer a standard of choice, who is able to break away from this retrospective harm and conditioning functioning. And that's why we support Tupu. You balance love between you and your family and your lover. It's why we allow for things like divorce to exist that is negotiated in legitimate terms, that carries no hate, resentment, and the like. Society has an obligation to support Tutu, but also Titi, to end this relationship in the most ways possible, but for both of them to be supported in whatever form of relationship they are going to. What does this mean and represent for society, and why is it important on the support? It represents society being progressive. It represents society being liberal. It represents society reconciling and accepting that peace and negotiation should exist even in an authentic relationships that exist within that regard. It means that society is much more meaningful on our side. People in society actualize beyond their biases and their ordinary judgment and hate speech that they usually give otherwise. I think this is important in the debate because opposition now has to explain to us why being a couple of haters on YouTube and abusing Tupu because he chose to go with like a stronger woman, or a woman who most likely promises him other things like and the like, is probably something that makes society much more meaningful. Why then do we think that the analysis that LO gives in the debate is untrue? She claims three things: that there is no communication in these relationships, and that it is very hard for you to accrue money out of them. This is unrealistic in the debate. Like, the actor you're engaging with, the agent you're engaging with, probably as Tupu, is a person who has a lot of money. So it means that even if the issue is about the kind of intimacy you got, 10 years ago, you were having intimacy probably in a cheap room, where as you were having intimacy, you're worried about rent. You have no worries of that anymore. You're in 5-star hotels. You're flying out on vacations. The intimacy that you're having is upgraded. The romance, the kisses, they are supported with things like how people are able to probably inject a lot of money into their sexual affairs. So it means that like you're probably also having things like, I don't want to say this disclaimer, but BDSM, and you're able to optimize and diversify your sexual interactions because you simply have the money to do so. Notice that the other person, that's probably the sugar mommy within that regard, also has the same interest. They want to maximize their sex, and they understand that them maximizing their sex means that they have to probably make you happy, and they have to make you not worried about whether you're gonna pay rent, or whether in the few years you're most likely not going to have anything for your family or for yourself. So they are much more likely to actually make these processes move faster within that regard. Notice that all of this is amplified if society is actively supporting. If society is telling, and the commentary on social media as well is that sugar mummies should probably give these boys whatever they want in order for them to have successful relationships, then it means all these things are amplified within that regard. That is not the comparative that exists when you constantly demonize this relationship in itself. Why do we think that Rin is very relevant within that regard? To give you the framing that he says love in its one form has diminishing marginal utility. You, at a time, you stop detaching, you stop caring about offering it for 10 years, and you want to experience love in the different forms, in the different ways that we have explained. I think this is why it's important to also respect it. Two things that it represents in terms of ideals that are important. One, self-exploration. You're tired of just having love in a broken down kind of like family and broken down relationship. You should navigate and have some other kind of like love that you're able to get within that regard. That's breaking up with Titi, but also breaking up with her in a concise way that allows her to also self-explore. Society can support for this to exist. The second is that it represents identity navigation, re-evaluating what your identity inclines towards. You have had 10 years of a relationship where you're the victim and you're suffering. You should also allow your identity to navigate in terms of like other forms of love that don't largely depend on intimacy or love in of itself being real, but just more in like explicit relationships, like having sex, waking up and driving a car, going for expensive dates, and all those things. It's important for society to see these things as important because it is what allows people to maximize utility out of their relationships. And if this is the standard we set for everyone, you give people much more choice and autonomy. Why has this speech been very important in the debate? The speech not only talks about why this is a justified thing to support, but how the support in of itself is meaningful. It literally makes society translate from being conservative, haters, judges, and something much more greater. People who genuinely support people, irrespective of the kinds of conversation or choices they make. You don't just stand down and shame people and criticize them for things they can't change. You actively allow them to navigate and change. We win by that. Here.
All right. Thank you very much, Speaker, for that wonderful speech. Opposition, second speaker.
Just confirming audibility.
Yes, you're audible.
Oh, and shout out to Jesse. Shout out to Jesse, yeah. So, and Sasha too. So I begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. So, Chair, you realize in a situation where your sort of heart is chained to another heart, no matter the distance, no matter the time span you've taken away from, you realize then, Chair, that this sort of individual is like, oh, the time has not started, Chair.
Mine has. Just continue. Or you can start from the beginning if you want.
Oh, either. So, Chair, you realize in a situation where your sort of heart is chained to another heart, and no matter the distance, and no matter how long you've taken away from each other, you sort of now have this sort of thing in the long run that wants you to sort of connect with this person, wants you to sort of get together with this person. Then realize, Chair, that these sort of feelings of love, what's gonna drive this sort of person, this sort of idea that they love this sort of person, so it's gonna drive this sort of person into sort of being into this sort of relationship. Chair, what does Pesh offer for two? What does Pesh offer for two? Pesh offers money. Pesh offers a better life for Tupu, but Tupu can't go to Pesh. You realize his heart being chained to Titi in the long run means that Pesh is more likely maybe also giving him this sort of better life in the long run, means that this sort of better life is gonna have it out of this sort of misery because of the fact that he's gonna actually leave this sort of person that he has chained his heart to. Yes, there's the fact that he's gonna leave this sort of person for a better life. Yes, there's the fact that he can live this sort of life. He can leave this sort of person and then offer them a better life. Yes, there's the fact that he's might actually leave this sort of person for a better life, and in the long run, also like offer his family a better life. But there's no point in that when you're gonna end up self-loathing yourself. You're gonna end up looking at your private parts every time and wondering, I don't know how Titi feels. I should go back. I should go back. You're gonna realize in the long run that this sort of person gonna be prone to things like a degrading mental health, and that sort of degrading mental health in the long run is gonna lead to them maybe committing things like suicide. Okay, best case scenario, this person is emotionless and doesn't care what happens to himself. You realize that Titi is the one going to face this sort of problem. He's gonna feel like, oh, I've been abandoned by this sort of person because I don't have this sort of funds necessary because our relationship wasn't meant to be in the long run. Then realize that it is prone to things like you're gonna realize that they're prone to things like suicide in the long run. Okay, yes, there's a fact that their relationship was never meant to work out. You realize that here. So these sort of individuals, when they prop comes and tells us that in the long run they can remain things like quote unquote friends. So you realize here that this sort of thing is gonna sort of shoot this sort of feelings of nostalgia into this sort of individual. This sort of feelings of nostalgia, gonna do this sort of feelings here. You then realize habits like stalking are gonna come about, habits like maybe running away from Pesh to maybe being in an intimate relationship with Titi because you want both feelings, you want both money and this sort of thing in the long are gonna arise. And when this sort of things arise, you're gonna realize this sort of individual is gonna be seen as an immoral person in the long run. Sort of individual is gonna be seen as immoral in status quo. Here, you then realize that you accept allowed.
Same intuition pump. If a girl child starts telling you that school is hard for them and the likes, just like Tupu is struggling with maintaining his new relationship, do you support them or do you tell them leave and go back where you came from?
The info slide doesn't say Tupu is suffering, Titi is suffering, or Tupu is suffering. It just says that they are poor, intimate, and in love. I'm continuing my speech in 3, 2, 1. You then realize that when this sort of individual now is opting, maybe the Pope comes and tells us that they're gonna opt for broader relationships and broader things in the long run, sort of broad relationships that Pope offers us don't work out. One, how does intimacy then look like? Intimacy looks like love combined with sex. Now, if I have sex with Pesh for cash, but I'm not having like this sort of love with this sort of individual, you realize that I'm just being seen as a prostitute in status quo. This sort of image makes me have this sort of for myself. This sort of image makes me want to feel wistful for the sort of love I have for this sort of individual. And then therefore you realize here that this sort of person is more like long run. Here, note, info slide says that this sort of relationship is poor. Therefore, things like divorce can't work out because things like divorce need like papers, lawyers, and in the long run, you realize that this sort of relationship, for it to end, needs things like abandonment in the long run. People just waking up one day and being like, I'm sorry, Titi, I'm leaving you for Peshi's man. Therefore, you realize that this sort of relationship can't even work out in the long run because this sort of decision of Tupu, this sort of relationship not being able to work out in the long run means that Tupu and Titi are gonna be left alone. Tupu is more likely to leave Titi broke because Tupu is this sort of individual that has a family, this sort of individual that has his own things, and yes, the possibility that Pesh can offer money for both him and her, but you realize these sort of feelings of love are gonna keep them entwined into each other. Look. Look, you realize that then therefore intimate relationships look like something that need to be long lasting, that have things like trust and love in the long run. And when you realize if this sort of relationship is unable to achieve those things, it's not seen as a relationship. Looks like this sort of relationship that no matter the 10 years they've been apart, no matter the distance maybe, no matter how far they've been apart, no matter the status quo that they're going through, they're still together and they're still thriving strong. Therefore, your relationship will break apart due to this poverty, but they haven't because of what? Because of these sort of feelings of love. Therefore, you realize that this sort of financial vulnerability gives this sort of an incentive to run to Pesh, but this can't work because there are things in status quo like circles, there are things like cohabilitation make them better. And yes, there's a fact that they can't actually pay these sort of loans back, but you realize there are other things like circles. These sort of circles are gonna offer for them like funds that help themselves. There are things like food programs, there are things like help the needy that in the long run help these sort of individuals up their lifestyle one bit by bit, and in the long run they become better individuals in status quo. Then realize on impact level, Tupu in turn gets a bad image since he's seen as this sort of prostitute that's going to pay
POI.
for this sort of income in the long run. And this sort of income is collecting from first in turn allowed.
For all we care, Titi and Tupu could probably start a company together after Tupu also has started a relationship with a sugar mommy giving them money. Solvency is still there. Why is it exclusive?
It can't happen. One, why can't it happen? Relationship, and then as far as Pop said, this sort of person is gonna keep on giving him small amounts of money that just keep him alive, but not keep him rich, because he wants Pesh to keep on coming back to him. Two, you realize again, this sort of relationship can't last because Pesh has the option to abandon Tupu in the long run, and when they abandon Tupu, that means Tupu is gonna be left broke in the long run. So that sort of thing, it's actually short-term solvency that in turn puts Tupu at a disadvantage. Continuing, you realize that then Titi gets this sort of bad mental health that commits her to things like suicide, gets this sort of wistful feeling that in turn also commits her to suicide, nostalgia that commits her to suicide, and then Pesh, this sort of individual that we think is actually going to be benefiting, also get this sort of bad image that yes, they might buy off from status quo, but it's going to still be there. It's going to be advertised on social media that you know what, Pesh works on OnlyFans, Pesh does this sort of thing with Tupu, you know what, Titi, leave your man, blah blah blah, and in the long run this relationship collapse is going to be detrimental for all three parties. Chair. That's my case.
Thank you, Speaker, for that wonderful speech proposition.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Okay. This is just anyway. Okay. Okay. Rin knows this better than anyone, so I won't just say it anyway. Okay, I don't want to waste time a lot. I want to just first say a few shout outs. I think shout out to Cap for these really amazing motions. Jesse, the future is bright for CAing. Shout out to Ocom that has organized this tournament for everybody to learn and grow. Shout out to the judges that are frustrated that we are here, but yeah, we have really justified reasons as to why we want to do this. Tough love to all the kids, guys. I think there is far more competition than us. So this is just to always encourage you that you need to always face on the competition regardless. That's the only way we are going to grow, by facing adversity, not by running from it. Yeah, Rin's kids are in the final. I had to knock out mine in the semis. Shout outs to them again. Shout outs to Nicole, Caro, Melissa. Yeah, Nimaro. Shout outs to Vivienne. Shout outs to Natalie. Shout outs to Agatha. I just love my kids so much. They're so brilliant. Yeah, shout outs to my babe as well. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's a love motion, so we all have to say shout outs to the people we love.
Which babe?
Guys, let's not get there. Yeah. Let's see. Oh yeah, shout outs to Michelle. There's a new whipping style we've been able to hook up, and I'm gonna use it in this debate. And we hope it can help kids who are trying to struggle with whipping, as because whip speakers is a very hard thing to do. And yeah, we hope it can also shake the world via via WSTC 2026. Shout out to Cap as well. Yeah. I love you guys so much. Oh yeah, shout outs to my teammates. They have carried me this far. I've been passenger princess, but yeah, now I'm gonna lock in for the round. 8 minutes 15 seconds.
Where are you right now?
She's coming. Okay.
But where are you right now? Where are you right now?
I know it's going to distract you. Okay. I'm gonna start on my next word. Oh yeah, shout out to Glenn too. Yeah, and Elena. Yeah. Panel, I think this debate is supposed to be very simple. It is not an actor debate. It is supposed to be a support debate. Do you support the decision or not? So it's not just specifically supposed to be about the actor, but everybody who is encompassed within this decision making calculus. On to what I promised. So this is how the speaker structure is going to go. There is going to be levels of I think I've already achieved that clarity. We're gonna give you speaker per speaker clash, i.e., how the debates went, but also the clashes. So let's just start with the first level of the debate, the first speeches. Rin is able to provide to you the idea as to why this is a very big situation in of itself. The idea of that there is a promise that this individual has put onto your life. She has sacrificed so much for you, her school, her life, her very dignity, in the hope that these 10 years are going to ultimately become better. You have now made the decision to leave her. I think in of itself, you're supposed to support this decision because she has been able to do so much for you, but you've not been able to do so much about your life. Even with your imperfections, this individual has been able to been supported. Like she has been able to support Tupu, able to provide all the necessary things to make her life better, or to make her things to work on. They are literally staggering afloat. That's why second speech is mitigation is very relevant on circles, because that's how they've been surviving. I think the idea here is that what Rin tries to impact in this debate for you is to show you that there is a responsibility in of themselves, not just for you, not just beyond yourself, but beyond the individuals, first of all, who brought you in this world and who have supported you to be the person you are today. Your parents, your family, you have an obligation to them to ensure that you have to do these specific things and make sure that their life is better. You have to opt for this woman. The second is on the idea of why this action is symbolically selfish on principle. Why Titi has been able to ignore her identity, her biological and social predispositions of education being important to her, of other things being good for her life. She has abandoned all these things, all in the pursuit of the love that you've been able to do. You think we say it is principally unfair for you not to make sure that her life is at least a bit better. For you to leech on her for the rest of her life becomes comparatively very bad for her as an individual. We say life is meaningless even for you as an individual because you've not been able to achieve anything in your life. You're not doing a lot. Nothing is working for you because life has been able to do nothing. Life is meaningless because you've not been able to achieve or aspire to get anything in this regard. Nothing tangible is existing. What it means then is that in of itself, money becomes the toolkit for you to get all those things. Living Titi makes her life better. He argues diminishing returns, where this love, that this so-called love that all these guys argue, so the idea of edging identity in of itself that is probably going to diminish over time. It means the care, love, and respect that there is so much on in this debate to win on is going to become diminished in of itself. The input becomes less, by default the output becomes less. How did first speech engage this on opposition? I have 5 things to be able to talk about, comments on this speech. Commentary. First, this is an info slide. The info slide already assumes capacity. So the bulk of her chat on not getting economic buy-in is highly dismissed by the info slide because you get the assets, you get the money. Unless if you want to be convinced, the money is already there. So assets are part of the money that you get from transactions, you can liquidify it, so on and so forth. But it's also not an actor debate. It's not just about the idea. I'm going to show you why that's important. Third thing here, the harm on him on himself. There's no analysis to show why he should forego the ideas of probably being exploited by this woman to be able to cater for the obligations, but also to make his life better if he so-called claims that he loves her so much. I think in of itself, it means that you don't be able to send most of these things. I think in of itself, you can be able to help her, send money to her, support her. Yes, you're not going to see her again. You're never going to interact with her again. But if she gets another broke nigga, you can be able to send money, like people for her school fees, her scholarship. You don't need to see her again. You can just make her life better extensively. That means you can extend the love. If that's the clash you're going to win on love, we think we co-opt that better on our side. You make her life comparatively better, show that you love her. The fourth thing is going to be that the decision has already been made. So everything that you get from first opposition is to argue why the decision shouldn't be made. It has already been made, so the framing knocks them out entirely. Once the way up here, we already argue for you from win speech alone. There is why Tupu's life becomes ultimately better, but it is life. On scale, they can't win on this specific part of the speech or this area of the speech, even with these arguments, because you opt more areas of skill and show you where we provide better on community. Our impacts are far better. For a support motion, you support something that probably helps more individuals on scale, but also makes their life far better. Second speech, what does Rahim say to this in of itself? Rahim gives you more content in of itself, talks to you about closure, where you can maximize sex, all these benefits everywhere. You can get other women because you now have money. You can get other things. The info said that the motion never said that you cannot get another woman elsewhere. I can fall in love with someone else, can love and interact with someone else altogether, just not Titi. I think in of itself, because your love has already eroded over time, you can build anew with another person. It's even going to be better because you now have money. You can make these other women happy. Make yourself happy and not feel guilty for making this girl's life a living hell, for making her trade off all the things on the other side. But Rahim runs a very powerful argument that has not been engaged, aside from what Rahim's case was never engaged. The idea of why this in of itself is symbolically to be able to fight the norm, to be able to be defiant to what society's expectations are. This is very important because this decision that you have made is a reflection of your identity, your predispositions as an individual. To be able to support this decision means you support Tupu's predispositions in of themselves to support him. His predispositions are a manifestation of his identity altogether. What it then means then is that you support Tupu's identity, his predispositions, and becoming the best version of himself altogether. We say that it allows him to self-defense against the toxic narrative of society that love that is involved with poverty is beautiful. We say he's able to defy the norm, create new discussions on what love is. New things can be seen in the podcast, can be discussed in podcasts by other peer groups. You're able to change the norm, be able to have agenda shaping power of other individuals and other discussions. We say there's no better benefit than that can be achieved on that side of the chart. We get argue why the quality of intimacy improves. A, we show you why there is money to diversify the options, but B, this also is able to be capitalized on the idea that they talk about. If first op says people are egoistic in nature, it also takes away the idea of your ego. You now have clout, you can be able to stand on your masculinity because you can provide, you are providing man and all those things, so on and so forth. We think that in of itself it becomes better. Before I engage second speech, is there a POI? Is there a POI?
Oh,
This
yeah.
guys, they have, yeah, please hurry.
Do you believe like love is a bond that lasts long, or it's just a bond that's
Please
there
read the,
for the sake?
that. Read the info slide. I'm not going to engage that. The info slide already takes out that claim. Let's talk about the idea of mental health in of itself. When you have money, you can go to therapists, you can fix your mental health and all those things, mitigated. Talk about together and living in diversity. You've been together with this person for 10 years. The decision has already been made. The motion already knocks you out. But secondly, the idea of circles and all these things, I already talked to you about it. Bad image, you have money to bribe people and make it look better. But most importantly, you have the ability to make these things look because of the bad image. I think the image looks worse when TT is suffering. Your image becomes far worse. The clashes, minor clashes. Which one is better for Tupu? A world where he has money, a world where he can be able to change the world, make it better, but also get achieve happiness. Better to be able to cater for his own mental health, but he has capacity to cater for the events or the effects and the bad things that these guys say are going to affect Tupu. He can mitigate them, he can become better. Exploitation may not be so much. Yes, there's manipulation, but he can do that to other individuals. So he can probably just turn his trauma and probably make world better for every other individual. Which one is better for Titi? A world where she can be able to go to school, education, move on to a person who's actually going to be able to make her life far better. She's only living with you because she's pretending to love you, because you promised her things. I think at the end of the day, becomes far better for Titi on their side to build a better world. Society, you change the norm, you diversify discourse, you make the world better because they have a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things to become better for that particular regard. I think we win on all these minor clashes because we benefit all the stakeholders. First, major clashes, utility. On scale, you're able to have more utility for all the actors, but you're able to maximize far more things for the individuals like we have listed above. You have to be able to flip. You have to be on each actor will give you why each actor is most likely going to benefit. On obligation, you're most likely going to be able to show you why there's an inherent obligation.
All right. Thank you, Speaker, for that wonderful speech. Opposition. Opposition third speaker. I'm sorry. Opposition, we're supposed to go third. I'm sorry, opposition, what's the problem? Because we've been waiting for you guys for a while now. What's going on? Okay.
Like, talking that way.
Whip is reconnecting. We'll be here in a few.
All right.
Well, the speaker says that their voice is not going through. Could you, if could you just click on the audio icon? There's a drop up arrow and try to see whether your mic is red or not.
Yeah, because also partly it will be if they're trying to join through like a desktop, that might be the issue. So it could be like changing the output of the voice, like to enable audio output or something like that. That could do. If you have a gadget, better even. You could probably just join through your phone or so.
I advise that you use somebody else's device to connect. That way it's going to be easier.
And the other issue could be, are you connected to any other like voice channel, either like on Discord or WhatsApp? If you are, you want to try and disconnect from those channels. Can be like Google Meet or something like that. So that might have voice come through as well. I don't know. Is it like possible if I could just like direct call you like maybe on I don't know, like possibly on phone? Yeah, like that would do. Or if, like alternatively you have someone you are with at home, you can just like share the link of Zoom to like their WhatsApp and then just like join in directly with their account. That would do. I don't know what works easily for you. Also, in an instance of unable to resolve this, can there be like anything that can be done? Like maybe excuse the Iron Man policy for this round, so that like one of the teammates can do this. So like we conclude the round as well.
Um, well, that sounds reasonable, but let's just give him like 5 more minutes. After that, if he's not here, then we can just excuse the Iron Man policy, although it's unheard of, but we can just wait.
So like he's requesting like we use Discord for his speech. Yeah, only.
The problem with that is that we have to record this speech, and it's currently recording, so we can't just move. Unless there's a way we can record Discord too, but it's going to be difficult for the person that is handling the record stuff.
No, the whip speaker is there. The whip speaker is there. She's gone. She's on. Nikki, please.
Sorry, come again.
Yeah, Nikki Peace is going to do the whip speech. She's around.
Okay, fine. If she's around, let's start now. Is why you guys confusing me.
The other option could be that we get like to stop the recording at this point. That's still okay because a substantial part of the debate has already been recorded, and then yeah, we just like have to go to Discord to listen to his speech. That's still okay.
All right, that also works with me. Let me just inform Cap 1 second.